Hey everyone, it's Mandy Gibbons here, and I'm here with Corey. And we've just been having a quick chat beforehand about a little bit about what he's doing in his work. And so I just want to get Corey, if you can just run over that briefly again, and then we'll go a little bit into your backstory if we can.
Yeah, cool. So for the last few years, I've been working as a coach and rites of passage facilitator. So that's kind of led me on a bit of a journey to create a bit of a shift in what I'm doing. Still doing the same stuff, but just having a bit more intention and focus around emotional regulation, particularly. So just leaning into having conversations with parents about how do they have a conversation with their angry teen.
Yeah.
What does that look like? How can they encourage them to shift that energy without actually saying you're a naughty boy kind of thing.
And without the teenager going,
yeah, exactly. And then talking to teenagers. So what I've found, I've been doing rites of passage for 3 years now, and what I've found is that kids at the moment are really angry and frustrated with the world, and that's for a number of different reasons. Some of it is about parents putting pressure on them to achieve a certain goal, to go to university, to have a certain lifestyle at some point in the future. Some of it is they're at private schools who need ATAR marks to get funding. So the schools create pressure around education to be like everything's education, education, education. But what I believe teenagers need is a balance of movement, a balance of good food, a balance of hanging out with their mates, and a balance of education. You know, we keep to 4 things. There's more than that, but if you keep it simple, so they move, healthy eating, have fun, and work hard, then that kind of creates for a really healthy teenager.
That's it. And when they've got like supportive teenage friends as well, like a peer group, supportive peer group around them, that helps as well. And I'm just segueing a little bit here because I'm just really interested in what you're doing. So is there, do you help them with communication with each other so they can support each other?
So a part of our process is to come back into a circle and decompress what the activities are. So yesterday we did an activity around, they had to draw a body. And then they kind of laugh and joke. They go, "Oh, is it like a dead man?" Because they have a massive piece of paper. So there's guys lying down and tracing themselves, and some kids are doing big muscle bound bodies. And then we bring them back into circle and we go, "Okay, so when you feel happy, where does that sit in your body?" And I go, "Oh, that sits in my heart." Like when you feel sad, where does that sit? You know, and then we have a conversation around that, you know, like, and it was funny, I said, "Oh, happiness sits in my eyes." And they go, "What do you mean by that?" I go, "Well, people know I'm happy because my eyes are lit up, you know, so I'm just going off how other people kind of see me." So we kind of have a conversation around adding vocabulary to their emotional language network. So they kind of have a very simple graft of what their emotions are, you know, like I'm happy or sad, or I'm depressed, anxious, angry. Like they're kind of the 4 that kids would typically come up, but there's so many layers up and down the chain. So we play charades after that. So we come to circle and then we go, "All right, we're going to play charades." We give the kids a card, and we have grief in there. We have anger, we have rage, we have irritability, we have worry, we have stress. So like there's all these different words that we put in, and the kids have to demonstrate what that looks like to them. And then we come back to circle and we talk about, okay, how did it feel to be that kid that demonstrated lonely? You're sitting, like 4 of your mates are sitting here in a group when you're isolated. Like how did that feel, you know? And had a conversation around that. But we had a boy yesterday, we went around the circle and we're talking about like, what are your biggest worries, right? And one kid, everyone kind of said exams, and inevitably you get an echo chamber in those spaces. Like one kid goes, "Oh, school stress," and they get away with it. So then that kind of becomes a recurring theme in the circle. So it's easier to kind of fit in with what's accepted rather than, so sometimes it's like angry, rage, like that comes up quite a bit. But yesterday it was all about pressure of performing at school. But one kid said, "Oh, making friends." And I'm like, "Oh, what?" So I just dropped in and said, "What does that mean? Like, why is it hard in Year 9 to make friends? Like, can you talk about that a bit more?" He's like, I've only been here for 3 weeks and I've really found it hard to like create a new network in this space. And then
how awesome is that he spoke up, right?
Well, it took enormous courage, right? Which is what we kind of talked about that at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, one of the questions was, what are you going to do differently in the next week? And one of the boys said, oh, I'm going to hang out with Caden and introduce him to some of my network outside of our PCG group, which was really beautiful. And then I also said to Caden that he's got an opportunity right now to be like selective about who he brings into his network. He can kind of observe and see and really create the community that he wants to have in his life, and like takes courage to go, oh, actually, I really like playing soccer. So I'm just going to go and say, hey, can I join you guys on the soccer oval at lunchtime? Or I really enjoy whatever Minecraft, and say, hey, can we catch up after school and do online gaming? Because that's just a part of the world.
Yes.
2021, right?
Yeah, that's it. And what's so wonderful about that as well is that, like, in a roundabout way, you're like teaching them and guiding them and coaching them and showing them how they can set their own boundaries, right?
Yeah. Well, boundaries is a massive thing, right? Like, because we kind of like, we want to go into this space and not be teachers. Like, we want to be our own people. And like, I get Corey, I don't get called sir. Like, I pull them up the first hour. I'm not sir, I'm Corey. I'm not sir, I'm Corey. And then I let it go after the first hour, but I encourage them to like remove the hierarchy a little bit. But I also set boundaries with them. So like, I say to them, okay, like, what are we going to agree that's acceptable behavior in the group? Like, we have our talking stick. What are the rules of the talking stick? And then like, that's sacred. So the talking stick rules get broken. Like, what is the consequence of that? And then, so we agreed on, it was interesting. The first day we agreed on 5 push-ups for everyone in the group. Were like, yeah, all in, like boys, like we're all going to do it, one in, all in. But yesterday I had a boy who was sitting next to me and he was like, if Steve does something wrong, why are we all getting punished? And I said, well, actually, I'll be really honest. I said, it's a really effective tool to curb behavior, because the kid that calls everyone to do 5 push-ups, it's unlikely that he's going to misbehave again. So yes, everyone gets it, but it actually like makes it a harder punishment for the boy that actually caused it to happen. He's like, all right. So then I said, okay, so you've all got this new information. So let's have a vote. Do we want to be one in, all in on the push-ups, or do we just want the boy who does the thing wrong to do the push-ups? And they're like, no, one in, all in. Right? So like, just being really transparent with them about like, not just going, well, it's that way because I said it's that way, but really being transparent about like, these are the boundaries. If you break the boundaries, there's a consequence to that. These are the consequences. And
there's 2 things that come up for that, right, for them, because they kind of probably don't want anyone to feel humiliated, right? And another thing is that they want to be all in on it because they see the benefits of holding each other accountable and responsible.
It's just a beautiful, I'm kind of writing a bit of a post about all that at the moment. But that's really awesome. Beautiful day yesterday, actually.
Yeah, that is so cool. And so what led you into this journey, right? Because that's that's such an epic thing to do. You were talking about generational change and transformation. So, to step into that, you've really got to be coming from here, right? To do that.
You need to be heart-centered. I guess for me, I used to be in construction. I was in a workforce, had a pretty severe, I didn't have an accident, but one of my co-workers had an accident and I felt like I was to blame for that. So I'll give you a rundown on it, and then that kind of led me on a healing journey. But basically, I'd had this yearning to get out of what I was doing, right? Like, I really had this yearning that I was in the wrong space and I needed to get back to either personal training or coaching or mentoring, whatever it was. I just felt like I didn't belong where I was, and I had felt like for a few years, but the money is super enticing. So just kept plodding along. And then it's funny, this guy, Brendan, that I'm going to tell a story about, he followed me throughout my career. So we kind of were on the tools together at one company, and then I got promoted at that company and ended up having to fire him because he was an alcoholic. So he was coming to work drunk. I'm like giving him warning. And the day I fired him, he brought his Harley Davidson to the workshop and did a massive burnout in the workshop when he left, right?
I shouldn't laugh, but
really unhealthy behavior, right? But then I used to jump around a lot. So I was always chasing the money. So if someone offered me more money, I would just jump and go work somewhere else. So I kind of went to another company, and Brendan came and applied for a job, and they're like, "Oh, you know this guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's an alcoholic. Don't give him a job." Right? Like, just really rigid in my thinking about that.
Yeah.
And then I shifted to another company, and Brendan rocks up for an interview. And I'm like, I said, "You know what, guys? I know Brendan really well, but I don't want to be involved in the process. So I'm just going to step out and let you guys kind of deal with it." So there's already started to be a shift in my thinking, right?
Yeah.
So then Brendan ended up getting it. They come to me and go, "Why did you step out?" I go, "I'm not." I said, "How did you interview?" They go, "Oh, he's actually perfect for what we need." I said, "Well, then put him on a trial and see how he goes." And then Brendan and I kind of became mates. Like, because I knew him, I'd go down the factory and we'd drop in and have conversations. On this particular day, I was all about delivery, right? I'm all about getting it done. So that would mean sometimes barking at guys and going, "Hey, like, we need to move this, shift that, do this, work 10 hours today," whatever it was. But my operations manager wasn't at work. So I'd gone into the factory and said, "Hey guys, you need to move XYZ steel."
Yeah.
Went back, rung the customer and said, "Oh, you're going to get your steel tomorrow," like the people pleaser in me.
Yeah.
"You're going to get your steel tomorrow, no worries." Go back in the factory and it's just dead quiet. It's really industrial environment, big compressors, sandblasters, steel cranes. Like, it has a particular noise that feels normal, right? It's like you could hear a cricket in the room. It was that quiet. And one of the bosses, the owner of the company, is like, "Don't go down there." And I'm like, I'm actually going to go down because I've had military experience. I've had EMT training. Like, I've had kind of that experience of rescue type stuff in the military. Even though it was 20 years ago, it's still inherently,
of course,
it's something, So somehow I went down there, and then I was kind of, I talk about having the Holy Spirit sitting on my shoulder in that moment, because I was like so calm and able to go, "Okay, you do this, you do that." Like, I knew what I needed to do to get Brendan. So what had happened was Brendan basically was moving the steel that I told him to move, and he got crushed underneath it. So, and it actually had punctured his stomach cavity. And one of the bosses said to someone, "I'll go sit with Brendan and hold him while we get him off." And then someone just said, "No, Corey's going to do that." So I very specifically said, "No, Corey will go do that." So I was up, and I was basically with Brendan, like when he took his last breath, when I passed him off to the paramedics, like, it was like I felt Brendan's soul in the room. It was like a life-changing moment for me. Like, and I just, the only way to explain it is that I can speak about it with clarity now without, I mean, I'm not being emotional, but the emotion's sitting right here.
I can feel it.
Yeah. It's right on the edge at the moment, but I can talk about it now, but it took me a long time. And when I passed Brendan off, like, as much as they came in the next day and said, "Oh, we put him on life support and we're operating," like, in my heart, I knew that Brendan had gone. I knew his soul had passed. Had passed over. And in that process of feeling his soul pass over, my brain exploded. Like, emotionally, I was just imploded, and I just couldn't function as a man. And like, I lost all that time. I had people, like, I put it back together now through other people. People like, "Oh, you were in the shower, man." Like, I was just in the shower fully dressed. Someone came in, undressed me, redressed me. Like, that's how incoherent I was. And someone brought me home who I didn't know who that was. And all these things kind of happened. And I just had to go on a healing journey. So it started by...
Wow, Corey, that's huge, right? And even just from, from a trauma point of view as well, Yeah,
it was interesting because it was like three guys that were really close to that situation and close to Brendan, and I was the only one that kind of exploded. And part of that was like, I kind of had a story. Like, when I went back, like the workplace psychologist, their whole view was you have to go back to work. So they were like, psychologists, like 4 weeks after the event, they're like, "All right, let's go and visit work tomorrow." So, like, I'm doing a walk through work with a psychologist, and the boys are like, "You just need to harden up." They use more explicit language than that, but that was the essence of it, right? And then I'm like, all right. So a few weeks after that, so maybe week 8, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go back
Yeah.
And I'm just going to do like 4 hours a week. Like that was like kind of like just a 4-hour block just to see how I go with the stress and all the things that come with being a manager. And my boss called me in the office. He goes, "I need you back full time, Corey."
Yeah.
I'm like, I just walked out. I'm just like, I can't.
Yeah.
And then I just made a decision. I can't do this anymore. Like I made a decision. I can't do this anymore. So then I said, I'm not seeing your psychologist anymore. I'm going to find someone who actually wants to help me heal rather than get me back.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? If it's, and you know, like I don't know the company or anything like that, but you do find in a lot of those processes, if they're hiring someone specifically from that company, they've obviously got that company's back a little bit more, and it's turnover and production and all of that is a big deal, right? And it happens a lot. It happens a lot when people are in situations and it's just like more of a, let's get this person back on track rather than heal them. And, you know, because it affects everything. It's it affects your quality of life, your immune system, everything about how you operate. All of a sudden with trauma, you all of a sudden come from a whole different energy in life, right? You're not operating from that same space anymore. And I think that tends to get ignored in that process.
Yeah, and essentially the workplace, I mean, they don't exist anymore. They've been bought out and they don't exist as a company, but I still wouldn't mention them. But they like part of my healing was like my doctor's like, yeah, Corey's going to help. We have our own business that my wife runs, but I would like pick and pack orders. So I was like picking and packing orders, and I was dropping my kids at school, and I had private investigators following me around. Like one morning I drove down to the shop to get some bread for the kids before school, and there was this car in my street, and then he's like in the pub across the road, and I'm just like I'm in the shop getting bread at the IGA, and the pub across the road, and the same car was in my street is parked in the IGA. So I'm just like, oh, that guy's following me. So, and I kind of knew that was happening because I'd seen different scenarios. I had someone take photos of me, like dropping my kids off at school, and like really, and I ended up just going, you know what, I can't deal with this anymore. I walked away with like 4 months pay, for what has been really should have been significantly more, but I kind of made the decision that I'm not ever going to heal if I keep fighting with these guys. I'm not going to heal, so I just needed to like walk away regardless of what the financial
outcome.
So, and then from there I've just been, I guess I spent a lot of time healing with different people. So I spent a lot of time with a female psychologist, and I'd kind of done a lot of healing on myself. And then ironically, I was talking to her about my wife, and she was like, "Oh, like you're kind of responsible for that. Like, what's going on in your relationship? You're responsible for that." But I wasn't ready to hear that, so I was just like, "Yeah, I'm done with you. Like, you don't understand what it is to be a man in a marriage, right? Like, really." So I wasn't ready to heal that particular aspect with that particular person. But I still wanted to heal. So I ended up doing some work with Steph Safandos, who he was in Freo at the time. And I'd worked with him as a personal trainer in our early 20s. We were like worked at the same gym together. So I kind of knew him fairly well. And then ended up doing a few years of work with him and working as a coach on some of his programs. And then Steph shifted over to the US, and I ended up like hooking up with Daniela Princey, who's my psychologist now, who I still see. Like sometimes I see her every week, and sometimes I see her once every 6 weeks. It just depends on where I'm at in the cycle of what's happening in my life. But I also made a conscious choice that I just couldn't go back to. I couldn't go back to what I was doing, and the rites of passage stuff. I don't know. I just felt a calling to that. For some reason, I felt like there was a gap in this space, and that I felt a calling to that. I'd been working when I first left work. I started a charity called Project Recycle, which was all about taking bikes into schools and stripping and rebuilding them with kids who are disconnected from education. Awesome. So I kind of had this mentoring program where I'd bring corporates in who would support the program financially and also send their workers in to connect with a teen or a teenager and have a conversation with them. So I had that for a few years, and then I kind of stepped away from that just because the money, like chasing the money, became hard work. Like I just didn't have the capacity to to chase some money. And I partnered with another charity, but things just didn't work out. Like they kind of said they were going to do a bunch of things, but didn't actually, or weren't capable of actually doing that. So, which is okay, like, but for me, it was too much to be.
Yeah.
And then I was leaning more and more into that work. Like, what is it like to mentor? What are other options? And then I did Rite of Passage Institute training.
Yeah.
With Arn. He came over to Perth, so we did that with 20 people. And then I just got a phone call from a group that runs Rites of Passage. They're like, oh, hey, we've got a gap this week. Like, we need like a facilitator to come and run a program. And I've been with AdventureWorks for 3 years now, you know, like just still running programs with them, running my own. So I kind of run my own Rites of Passage stuff, like a whole bunch of different stuff. But that's we can dive into that, but I guess that's my story. Like, so I've basically done a lot of healing across different mediums, from doing breath work in men's circles and running men's circles and healing through that. I heal as much as the men who come along to those spaces, you know.
Yeah.
More often than not, it's my vulnerability that creates opportunity for others to actually share what's going on for them.
Yeah, and you're leading by example, right? And when people see that, it gives them the opportunity and the understanding that it's okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Really. That's awesome. I love this so much. And so with what you're doing now then, like, talk us through that process, and also like, how do you find, like, because I think, you know, talking a little bit before about how it also helps like teachers and parents to have their own little healing journey along the way, right? And so, talk us through what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of in the process of like rebranding and rebuilding everything right now. I was chatting with Mike Dyson from Good Blokes Co this morning. My son and I did a Rite of Passage with him earlier in the year, like a father and son camp, which was epic. But I'm leaning into like managing big emotions. So like I'm staying with the same brand side by side, because I feel like that's really the core of how I healed. A lot of my healing was done on push bikes, riding beside other guys and just talking about, like, them just listening to me talk for an hour about what was going on in my world was really powerful for me. So that's kind of where that came from. But where I'm moving towards is, what I've found is that teenagers are getting angrier. Their emotions are getting bigger and they're getting more out of control. So what I'm going to dive into now is talking to teens about what their big emotions are, but going to high schools and saying, hey, do you have teenagers that are struggling with big emotions? Can I come in and talk to the teacher group about what it would look like to, or what drives teenage boys to be outrageous or to be aggro or to be whatever, insert big emotion. What drives that, and how can we do things differently? What are the cues that indicate something's going wrong for someone? Can we notice those things? Can we, you know, so it's really about teaching parents and teachers about how to have those conversations. And then from there, hopefully, like, they'll go, hey, actually, I'm going to offer a 5 or 6 week program on managing teenage emotions for parents. And then inevitably parents will have an opportunity to look at, like, is that a mirror of myself? What is going on there? Like, why is that happening for my son? How am I influencing that? Or what is going on for my daughter? How am I influencing that? So it's really easy to say, look what you made me do, right? Like, it's really easy for parents to say, look what you made me do. You know, when a parent loses their shit, they say, look what you made me do. It's very easy to project instead of own, oh, I just lost control of my emotions and now I'm in my bedroom sobbing like a 5-year-old. And that is perfectly okay, right? Like, because we all have, I love the poem 11. It's have you ever heard of the poem 11?
It sounds familiar to me.
So the poem of 11 is a beautiful poem about emotion. So it's a girl who turns 11, and it can be a boy. So we kind of use non-gender specific names in the story, but it's written about a little girl, and she's like, she turns 11, but she doesn't feel like 11. She's like, I still feel like 10. And then she goes to school and she has this like journey throughout. So she shares her day, this journey throughout the day. And she's like, there's a red sweater and it's got long sleeves and it hangs off your arm. And the teacher's stupid Sally said it's my jumper. So now the teacher's put it on my desk and I just want to be 5 and I just want to cry.
Yeah.
And she's talking about all these different times. So like when we're 44, we can still be 5 years old.
Yeah.
We can still throw a tantrum like a 5-year-old, right?
Yes.
All of us have that because we've all been 5 years old. So we all have that emotion in us.
Yeah.
What goes on in society is, oh, I just threw a tantrum. So now I'm going to carry shame and guilt with that.
Yes.
When we carry shame and guilt, we then cycle back to being a 5-year-old and away we go again, right? And the cycle inevitably spirals down until we get to, I'm now angry. And then anger turns into, well, now I can't control the anger, so let's call that rage because that's just uncontrolled anger, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, men have deep shame. So I can talk about men. We have deep shame about our anger. So then we're like, I'm not a good father. Yeah. And then from there it goes to, if I'm not a good father, my family don't need me. Yes. And then from there we go to attempted suicide, right? Yes. Yeah. Like it's a very there's not many steps to get to suicide for men. No, not many men for women either. The reason that men suicide rates are higher than women is because we're better at it. Yeah, that's the only reason. Women actually attempt suicide way more than men do, but they're just not efficient at that type of stuff. Yeah. Men they're very violent when they commit suicide. Yes. Yeah. Like yesterday, a guy,
oh, Corey.
Like, we had 2 extremes yesterday, right? Yeah. We had a group of men that are angry. Yeah. That the union's not supporting them. They're angry that they've been left unemployed. Yes. And therefore, all the stuff I was just talking about, the anger, the rage, I can't provide for my family. Yes. That is all very real for those men right now.
It is, yes.
Nobody's talking about that.
Yeah.
Everyone's just talking about how violent these men are. Yeah. The guy who jumped, one guy, they shut the site, he walked to the top of the building and jumped off scaffold. Yeah. Like, it's the same emotion. Yes. It's the same thing, right? He can't, he has no way to provide for his family for the next 2 weeks and he's living week to week. Yeah. Yes. Where's he going to get food? Yeah. How's he going to pay his rent? Yeah. Is it going to go longer than 2 weeks? I don't know. Yeah. Like,
there's so much pressure on men. I mean, being a resilience coach for men, I see this so often, right? The pressure that men are under. And, when you're held in that position to be the provider and you have, I mean, that's a huge responsibility. And when all of that, when your livelihood is ripped out from underneath you and you can't see hope, you then, it's the same as, when you we talk about trauma, you're then like operating from a whole different space. That's exactly what happens. It's like you're not yourself anymore. It's so traumatic, and I actually find it heartbreaking when I hear people say, just get the fuck over it, mate. You know what I mean? La, 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 because it's not, unless you're in that position and unless you've actually been through that, you're feeling that experience in the same way that bloke is experiencing that, you're just not going to get it.
Well, they're only getting the tip of the iceberg, right? Yeah. They don't know what they're only getting to see maybe 3%. People say 10%, but it's probably 3%, right, of what's going on in that guy's life. Yes. What's happening in the other 97%? Yeah. You don't know, and that's why we need to be compassionate and empathetic, even to these guys who are losing control. They're literally out of control. Yes. Yeah. We need to hold them in compassion, as hard as that is. Like,
I'm going to high five you on that, because I am so up for that big time. And I cop a bit of flack you know, for the way that I do hold so much compassion for men in those situations. And well, one, I've had a lot of firsthand experience with that in my own personal life and through work as well. So like, I deeply, deeply feel for them. And, you know, when you turn your back on someone like that, when they're in desperate need for help, you know, and not only that, when someone's like that, they're shutting down, right? You get to a point where you shut down so much, you don't feel supported, you don't feel like anyone understands you, feel so deeply alone. And then and when you get to the point where you feel everyone is better off without you,
yeah,
you know.
Well, your prefrontal cortex is closed down by that stage, right? So there's no thinking at all. It's like purely your brain drives, like our brain lies to us and our emotions lie to us, right? Because our brain drives the emotion, and then that becomes a self-perpetuating prophecy, you know. Like, I mean, I've been even recently, I was in a container and like my wife rung. Like I just said to my wife, like, I'm really in a dark space, I'm taking myself to hospital. And I actually just took myself to the beach. And she came to the beach and seen my car but couldn't find me.
Oh my gosh, she would have just gone, oh.
Yeah, so she rang my friend, and then I had like half a dozen men out looking for me, you know. Like, not that I wanted that to create that situation, but it was really powerful for me to know that people care, right? So now I've got capacity to, and even though I did a video about this the other day, you know, like men's favorite saying is, if you ever need any support, mate, reach out, give me a call. So here you go, man. We're not going to call when we're in our shit. We're not going to call. You've got a mate you normally meet for a coffee on a Friday. He doesn't show up for 3 weeks in a row. Something's going on. You've got a mate who's active on social media and all of a sudden he's not. There's something going on. If you've got a mate who has changed his messaging, he's not going to work. If you work somewhere and you know a guy who never takes a day off, calls in sick, what's going on? Like, there's so many, we're creatures of habit, right? So we have patterns. If we break those patterns, whether it's going to the gym or whatever, like I work in a gym and I'm like, if I haven't seen someone for a week, I'm like, hey, Mike, Sally hasn't been to the gym. What's going on? Oh, she's on holidays. Oh, cool. Like, because I want to.
I get that. I'm exactly the same.
Like, I notice patterns, right? People come and train with me. Like, I'm a creature of habit. I have the same 3 shifts, so I train with the same people each week. Like, I know who's who in the classes, and you kind of get to know, hey, you look tired, man. You all right? What's going on? You know, I had a guy come in the gym at 7 o'clock the other night. Like, hey, what are you doing here now, man? It's pretty late. Like, you're normally in at 5. What's going on? It's like, oh man, my boss, you know. And he's like, oh man, I just want to let you know your videos are really powerful. Like, I really resonate with them, like, because I've been talking about anger, you know. And his boss is a 48-year-old man who's behaving like a 5-year-old all the time. He's not making enough money as a lawyer. You know, like, for that guy, he has a choice, right? Whether he stays in that environment. He goes, oh, actually, I'm not willing to stay in this environment anymore. I'm willing to go here. It's also not my place to go, hey man, do you think there's a better option for you? All I can say to him is, hey, like I said to him, like, if you need support, you know, I've already had the conversation with him about that. I'm like, well, if you need some support around that, reach out. You know, it's it's the scary thing is that my son is in year 7 and they're talking about masculinity and femininity, right? It's like, oh, Dad, we're talking about masculinity and femininity. I'm like, oh yeah. Well, what does that look like? Like, what does the conversation look like? And he's like, oh, we've decided, these are 12-year-olds, decided that men go to work and provide for their family. That's what masculinity is. And we decided that femininity is a beautiful looking girl. That's to be feminine. I'm like, okay, that's the most toxic version of those two things, right? Sure, they're a part of it.
But that's what we're programmed into believing, right?
Well, that's a societal program, right?
Yeah.
That's like, you know, I say to my son, I go, don't trust adults because we don't know what you're going to be doing in 20 years' time, mate.
Yeah.
Like, we have no idea what you're going to be doing in 20 years' time.
Well, you think about all the stuff that like we learned, and like, you know, my whole belief system about myself and just about so many things has just transformed over the years. And it's a lot of it's been from life lessons, right? There was no one teaching me anything or showing, you know, it was sort of like healing along the way.
Yeah. So, but then when I said to him, I said, oh, we need to have a conversation about this. Like, if I ask you to drop the society narrative of what it is to be masculine, like what is to be masculine for you? He goes, oh, it's just a label, Dad, that I don't need to pick up.
Yeah.
Oh. Like, but you still feel the pressure to get married and be a provider, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is working is not, the Industrial Revolution is over, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm blessed that my kids get to see how I work, right? You know, there's a perception that I'm rich because I'm always at everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I live differently.
Well, the cool thing about what you're doing is that, you know, like there's going to be like the teenagers and the kids that you're helping now, right? And even the adults by default, you know, like the next generation and the next generation from that. It's the impact is long term, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like I grew up in a pretty hostile environment. My parents got divorced pretty young. My mum was probably undiagnosed with bipolar.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into that whole story, but I grew up in that environment, right? Where I didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
When you don't feel safe, but as a kid, you can't be angry, right? You're not big enough to like protect yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you create this persona that as soon as I'm big enough.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, and I got myself big, right? Like I'm 5'8", I'm 90 kilos. Like I don't see myself as big now. Like I was much bigger than what I am at the moment. But guys see me like, bro, you're a tank, man. Like you're a big guy. I'm like, oh, am I? Am I really a big guy? I kind of don't live and breathe that as much. But with the big guy, there was also like the angry, right? So I was always puffed up and like people would walk across the street to avoid because I had that kind of energy, you know, like I was just a really unhealthy, toxic, angry guy. Like I just lived and breathed it, you know, because that was my protector.
Yeah.
If I don't let anyone in, then I'm safe.
Yeah.
Which makes it real hard to make friends as an adult.
It is. And, you know, I think there's a lot to be said about, I mean, even as a female, I mean, I got bullied a lot and, you know, a lot of stuff when I was at, so I learned really, really young how to protect myself, not so much physically, but in here.
Yeah.
Right. And I got bullied by girls a lot, but not by boys. So I used to that's why I hung around. It was always safe for me to hang around with the boys. And because of that, I've always just had really long term, always hung out with guys. They've always been my best friends, right? And so I have really good female friends now, but for a long time I never felt safe around women, you know, because I always had that thing where I had to protect myself, couldn't let them in too much, because if I did, you know, the whole mean girl shit would go on and I just wasn't into that type of thing. So it's, all of us have that in us, right? Yeah.
We all have a protector, you know, like we all have, I think it's ILS, which is like, it's a psychology that basically talks about, this psychologist, he was with a person who had bipolar, she had multiple personality disorder.
Yeah.
He's sitting in a session with her and she had different personalities. So Happy Sarah, and they all had different names, right? So Jessica rocks up and she's angry.
Yeah.
And he's just like, what do you need to not be here? Jessica, what do you need Sarah to do for you not to be here anymore?
Yeah.
And then when Sarah came back, he had a conversation with Sarah and said, hey, Jessica actually just needs this from you, and then she won't come in and protect you anymore. So if you do that,
Yeah.
then Jessica's going to stop showing up.
Yeah.
And then that's what happened, right?
Yeah.
So we all have that same, we all have, our emotions are like personalities, right?
Yes.
So we have this character. For me, it was anger, and I built the tank to go with it. So we have this character who's anger, who he needs to protect us, right? But sometimes that protection is not necessary, right? Because it's been necessary because there was violence or whatever, but then it perceives any risk as being dangerous. So a good example is I had a boss who come up to me and he just like said, hey, Stan quit yesterday because of you. And I'm like, man, angry character come out.
Yeah.
Like, how is that my fault that I asked him to do his job properly? Like, I'm not taking, and really they should have fired me, but because I took the company from X to Y in profit, they didn't fire me, right? But if I was in that situation and an employee came in, I'd be like, you're out the door, bro. Like, reflecting on it, like I'm writing a book at the moment about my story, not necessarily to publish, but just for my kids to have some perspective on who I've been in my life. And maybe I will one day, but for now, it's just it's a legacy thing for my boys. And so it's interesting, like talking about all these things that have kind of happened in my life, but I'm responsible for that. But I look back on that, I'm like, how did they not fire me? You know, like the whole, we're in like a 400 square meter building and everyone heard me. Like that is just crazy, you know. But and they wouldn't have felt safe to say you're fired, because what would be like, what's the next escalation of this for Corey? We've just told him, he's like, call someone to quit. What's the next escalation if we say you're fired? Like what? There's probably fear there, right? So it's just it's super interesting. I'm not sure how we got there, but
well, what I was going to ask you was, what do you find like is the biggest, I don't know if gap's the word, but we'll use that for now, you know, that teenagers have when it comes to being able to understand their emotions and feel them and identify them, and also have a beautiful understanding of them and not be so harsh on themselves, right? Have a bit of self-compassion for themselves.
Yeah, I think that they don't have language around emotions, so they kind of have like 4 core emotions. Like they have, you know, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm anxious, I'm angry. You know, like that's kind of there's a restriction in the vocab around it. So it's teaching them as a spectrum, and you can be on the spectrum of emotions. I think they lead by example, right? So their parents don't have any capacity to show emotions and be healthy. And for a dad to go, hey son, I lost my shit yesterday, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. You know, I had a boy yesterday who, he's a rooster, I call him a rooster, right? This is really funny. Like has to be like interrupting, has to get all the answers, has to be like, look at me, I'm the center of attention, right? And it was interesting because I'm not going on camp with those particular guys. I was meant to be training another facilitator, but they didn't show up, but that's another story. But anyway, I was with them. So I went a bit deeper yesterday because I'm not on camp with them, and there were some things that I wanted to plant seeds around. So that particular boy, we had a conversation, and he's like, I'd had a conversation with him, what would it look like for you guys? Because there was a few boys, he said, like, I feel a lot of pressure from my parents to perform at school, to get certain marks and to achieve certain levels of performance. When I don't do that, things are not good at home. So I said to them what it would look like for you to go to the school psychologist or the counsellor or someone within the school network and have a conversation with them about what it would look like to have a healthy conversation with your mum and dad about how you feel around their pressure. And this kid, the rooster, he's like, my dad doesn't have healthy conversations, right? Straight up, you know, just owned it. And I said to him, I go, and I said, oh, who do you want to be? I said, oh, who do you want to be in 6 months' time, right? Like, you could be anyone. Like, how do you want to be? And he's like, I just want to be myself. And he goes, what does that look like? He's like, I don't know. He goes, funny. I go, well, aren't you already funny? He goes, oh, am I? I go, nah. I go, well, you wear this mask of humor, right? Like, so I said, oh, you wear this mask of humor. Is that real, or is that like, what are you hiding behind? Like, what are you? What is that doing for you? Like, really challenging. And I'm doing that in front of, like, a really gentle way. In front of 12, 14 other boys. So they're all like, oh, am I wearing a mask? What is my mask? You know, so that's kind of how we facilitate, or that's how I facilitate those conversations. Like, we have 6 or 7 facilitators, we all do things differently, you know? That's kind of how I get boys to look at, I get them in a circle and I start to pull back the layers, you know? You get them in the bush for 3 days, take teenagers in the bush for 3 days, hike them, you know, 15, 20 Ks on the first day, and then get them around a bushfire, run an exercise with them where I get a massive fire going, and I've got like an Akuba hat and a big coat that I wear, and I get into this character role. And then I've got the teacher walking them back in silence. And I'm like, if you accept the challenge, come into the circle. They're not allowed to speak. So they either step into the circle or they don't. And there's peer pressure, right? So they're all going to step in the circle. I've never had someone not. And then they pick up their buff and they blindfold themselves. And then we walk them out into the bush, and I'm on the back and I'm just pulling them off one by one and dropping them. Blindfolded. And then I go, when I'm ready for you to come back, I'll give a cooey, and then you guys can head back to the fire. They might be, depending on the group and how active they are, it might be 10 minutes, it might be 40 minutes. You know, you kind of have to read the space. Some guys are not going to do 40 minutes. Some guys are. But it doesn't matter whether it's 10 minutes or 40 minutes, it feels like 4 hours. Like, time collapses. They've never had any time with their own mind, right? Typically. So they get an opportunity to be with their own mind. Then we come back and we sit in the circle. Hey, what come up for you? And some guys are like, I'm cold, my bum hurt. And other guys are like, oh, you know, my dad didn't love me. Like, he left when I was 3 months old. Like, this is a 15-year-old boy, right? And then all the other boys, like, once you crack the egg. Everyone goes, right? It gets deeper, and, you know, so, I mean, so the biggest takeaway I've had from a camp is that last year I had the same group, and I had 2 breakthroughs in that group. One kid, he had his sister doing his snaps while he was away, so he didn't lose because he didn't have his phone. He didn't want to lose his snap streaks. He had like 180 streaks going that were all over 900 days or something. And then on the last day, I'm like, bro, you're attached to your phone, man, and your snaps and your streaks. And he's like, nah, man, I'm not. I'm like, okay, well, let him go. Like, tomorrow, don't do any streaks. And then I met him a year later, and I'm like, hey, how are your streaks going, man? He goes, I only have 3, man. He goes, they're with people that are in my immediate network that I actually communicate with on a day-to-day basis. Like, it was so beautiful. And then another boy came up, and he's like, I'm like, what was your top takeaway from camp last year, Jonah? And he's like, I'm responsible for my own happiness. It's like, oh, man, I was fist bumping in the air, like high-fiving everyone. You know, and he said that in front of all his mates, you know, so then they're like, they're not hearing it from me. They're hearing it from him. So when he says to them, like, hey, man, like, because he doesn't just say that to himself, right? He says it to everyone else. It becomes a really powerful.
Oh, this is so good, you know, like personal growth for teenagers, right? I mean, to be able to tap into that at that age is massive, like, transformation for, you know, and the way that it'll change your life then, and then how the direction of how you're going to like lead the rest of your life, and then for the next generation as well. But I mean,
you knock a ship off path 1%, right? At 15, you're on a trajectory and you knock it 1%.
Yeah.
Like the thing with teenagers is like they're developing new pathways, right? Like something like 60% of your neural pathways get stripped out of your brain when you're 16. So mum and dad, when your teenager forgets his laptop at school, or when he doesn't take his lunch, or when he leaves his laptop bag at home, whatever he forgets, his brain, he doesn't actually mean to piss you off.
Yeah.
His brain is not functioning at 100%. So, which for me creates a beautiful opportunity to create a new pathway of, I'm responsible for my own happiness. I'm responsible for my own happiness. That becomes a pathway, right?
Yeah.
That they take through the life. As an adult, it's much harder because we have like neural pathways that are like super freeways. So I had like a super freeway that was like related to anger that was like 12 lanes wide.
Yeah.
And I've just been carving out, like I just started out by carving out like a little dirt path, like carving out. And you have to practice. Like it's taken me like 6-7 years of like, and I still, sometimes the car still jumps on the freeway, right?
Yeah.
On the super highway that exists. It's always going to exist. Like, how can I, the question I used to ponder, which I've given up on really, is like, why do men have to hit rock bottom to create change in their life?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just a reality, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, not all men do. I think it's like, sometimes it's like, and I've said this to my clients, sometimes you'll get a few taps on the shoulder, and then all of a sudden, and you're not listening, so you get a bit of 4B2 around the head. It's as simple as that, like some people listen early, some people don't. So, and the thing is that like, and it's not because you're a dickhead or stupid or not insightful enough. You know what you know at the time. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. But it used to keep me awake at night. Like, how can I help men create change without them crashing and burning their life first?
Yeah. That's it. I see that a lot. I'm lucky. The majority of guys that come to me, the reason that they come to me is because they've seen their mates just spiral downhill really quickly, and it's happened. Yeah, it's happened fast.
Yeah.
They've just made a few decisions that have screwed things up, and then blam. And so they've seen that and they've gone, we don't want to go down that path, or they feel like maybe they're starting to go down that path. So they're like, let's get it sorted now,
Yeah, it's funny. Like I do all this work and I've had so many mates in the last, like in my immediate network, that kind of seen me implode, like, and rebuild, and they become my friends because they're all bike riders, like try to commit suicide, quit jobs, implode businesses.
Yeah.
And they've got like all this network around them, and they're still, but they're coming out the other side, which is really beautiful. Like I said to my mate the other day, he had a really bad time. I'm like, man, like, don't leave that in the shadows. Like, that's your story.
Yeah.
Like, just share that. Like, you can't keep it in the shadows. Like, that story is really powerful. Yeah. And that's going to change lives. Like, your story is the thing that's going to change lives, not like what you're doing now. It's about how you got here. Like, don't.
And we are, I guess, we are taught and programmed to be afraid of our darkness, right? And to hide it. And, that's why it's so easy for it to come creeping back up and bite us on the ass again, because we are so afraid of it, right?
Well, if we don't address it, it's inevitable that it's going to come back, right? It's just like, I got the tap on the shoulder, Corey, you need to be getting out doing some coaching, Corey.
Yeah.
In your last job, Corey, you had 4 young people working for you. This job, you're just like flying solo, tap on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Like in construction, like I had 3 major meltdowns before Brendan.
Yeah.
Just crazy. I was only like 34.
Yeah.
And I had 3 meltdowns. You know, one, I fell asleep at the wheel and crashed my car into a tree. You know, the second one, I was on a construction site. I just rang my boss and said I've got the flu, and I was sick until that job was finished. I refused to go back to it. Like, rather than just going, hey, I'm not coping.
Yeah.
It's just crazy, that I had to get to that space.
Yeah, I've seen men rocking back and forth, sobbing, to being severe paranoia, to absolutely having massive breakdowns, and it's because they haven't had the support, you know, via their friends or their work or wherever. And when they looked for support, it just wasn't there. It wasn't available to them. You know, they couldn't get appointments for like 3 months and stuff like that. And it's just messy as fuck, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and the system's broken, right? Like, I had a mate, he went to hospital, Fiona Stanley. He's like, I want to check myself in. I've been thinking about suicide. This is how I'm going to do it. And they're like, oh, yeah, you seem pretty calm. We're going to send you home.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that makes me cross.
24 hours later, we're lucky he's still with us, right? The airbag saved him.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy, right? And then he gets admitted for 10 days, you know, because he's actually serious.
Yeah.
You know, he had the cognizance to go get help.
Yeah.
But didn't actually get it.
Yeah, I had someone close to me. They went to the hospital, admitted themselves. They changed their meds, which made things worse for them, and then put them back on their other meds, which weren't helping anyway. And then on the last day, like, this guy needed help desperately, and then they checked him out, said there's nothing we can do, and the doctor came in and just said to him, okay, you can go home today and get your shit together and just go enjoy your life, mate. Just be glad you're alive. And I was devastated for him, absolutely devastated for him. And he actually said, because he told me this straight after he'd come out, and he said the nurse there just put her hand on his shoulder and just shook her head, because she was just devastated that the doctor said that to him, you know.
Yeah, but he's just a man who's living in the paradigm of unhealthy masculine, right? Like, that's all the doctors are. Like, they're not trained.
No. And I'm not saying that all doctors and, you know,
of course, like, there's percentages in every industry, right?
But it's just like, you know, that's why it's so good to have other resources, and it's so good that you're doing things like this. And there's so much work in this now, helping men, right? Like, I've been really excited, even, you know, with this podcast. Like, I've just been like reaching out because I want to bring way more awareness, right, to what men are going through, and being able to support men. But not only that, it doesn't just help men, it helps their families, it helps their wives, their partners, you know. It's a very holistic approach, and being able to have men feel like they can have a bit of self-compassion for themselves and understanding for themselves, and be able to know that it's okay to be feeling the way that they're feeling, and that they can ask for help, and that there's a lot of options out there for them. And, you know, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because then people, they might watch this and go, wow, there's someone else I can speak to, you know.
If I help one person and they help 10 people, and those 10 people help 10 people, and then those 100 people help 10 people.
Yeah.
That's 3 degrees of separation. Yeah. Every person you help, you've helped 1,000 people.
I know, the ripple effect is just amazing, right?
It is exponential, you know. And the thing is, like, if one guy in Melbourne listens and sees how I felt about what's going on for them, and they reach out and go, hey, I need some support.
Yes.
Like, that's beautiful, right? Whether it's me or you or someone else, but they go, oh, I never thought about it like that. I never thought that that's what's driving what's going on for me. They're just angry, so they can't actually see any of that.
Yeah. Yes. That's it.
It's
Oh, this is so good. We tried to catch up before, and then we
it was
weren't
meant to
able
be
to.
today.
And it's so good that we're able to catch up today. And I've been looking forward to this because I've seen some of your posts, and I don't know, I just had a really good gut feeling. I actually said to my coach today that I had a really good gut feeling about today. So there you go. So that's so cool. And is there, like, before we wrap up, is there anything that you would just love to share, that you would love people to know, whether that's teenagers or men in general, like something that you know that you would just like to impart with them, a bit of wisdom or something?
I think the thing that I say to wrap up when I get asked a similar version of this question is be kind to yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, just breathe.
Yeah.
With your hand on your heart and your hand on your belly, and just breathe in all the goodness that you can breathe in,
Yes.
and then breathe out whatever is not serving you.
Yeah.
And just be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I can't believe you just said that. I've just released, it's like a book, and I actually recorded a self-compassion audio in it with that in it. It's like a whole audio on that. And a few people said, why would you want to do that? Guys aren't going to do that, you know? And I said, hey, like that right there is like your perception, right? This is why things are so confusing for men at the moment, right? So
they don't know. Teenage boys don't know how to behave, right?
Yeah.
They don't know what the societal standard is anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, even I get confused about what it means to be a good man sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I think to be a good man, you need to be kind, right? You need to be compassionate, and you need to be respectful.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, if you can do those three things,
Yeah.
like kind to yourself, compassionate to society, and respectful to everything, like nature, your own body.
Yes.
You know, like, you want to start respecting yourself, start eating a better nutrition. If you've never exercised and you're 40 years old, get out and go for a walk.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to make you mentally feel better. I mean, I could open up a whole can of worms, but like, being kind to yourself, what does that mean, right? Like, it's so broad, but it's like, be kind to yourself, like, put good food in your body, you know. Like, I'm really in a health mode at the moment. Like, I've really been stuck in, I didn't talk about this today, but I've been stuck in unhealthy eating. I've been emotionally eating and just going, I'm feel shit, so I'm going to eat sugar, right? And then, you know, I put on 12 kilos over like 15 months. You know, at some point, I can't keep trajectorying in the way that I'm trajecting, right? Because I'll be your typical 50-year-old who's 20 kilos overweight, and I'm not. It's not who I am as a person. I mean, I've done some videos about this, but I think being kind to yourself is like, put down the Tim Tams and pick up an apple. That's being kind to yourself, you know. Like, and when you do
self-compassion isn't about woe is me or playing victim or blah 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 blah. It's just being understanding of yourself.
If you picked up the Tim Tams, like, why? Be curious about that. What was I doing 10 minutes before I ate a packet of Tim Tams that had 3,000 calories?
What was I thinking? What was I feeling?
Exactly, right? Like, what was tracking? And there's so many vices, whatever the vice is, but like, that's why a journal's so powerful, right?
It is. Oh, I'm so stoked we caught up today. This is awesome.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. And do you mind if I ask where people can reach out to you? Is there something specific that...
So my website's just sidebysidetogether.com.au, and if they look up my name, Gaidzionis, I'm the only one in the world, I think. So that will take them to my social media, Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. I'm pretty active kind of on Facebook. So Facebook or Instagram is kind of the spaces, but just Side by Side Stronger Together is my page. So so that's kind of my ethos. I think that if we walk together side by side, we sit together in a circle, we ride bikes side by side,
I agree.
play golf side by side, whatever it is, we do something together. then we end up stronger.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Awesome. And I'll include links to that
Cool.
in the post with it, because it'll go to YouTube and a few other places, and then obviously all the MP3 podcast places as well. That's so good. Oh, thank you so much for today.
Cool. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay then, Corey and everyone, thanks so much for coming on today, Corey. You've been amazing, and we'll catch everyone in the next episode. See you later. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Hey, beautiful man. If you're going through stress, need insight, direction to lighten the load, brother, and support during these challenging times, reach out to me. It's no secret that there are so many men suffering at the moment, amazing men, and they're so keen to get help, but don't know what that looks like. So I've created a 6-week one-to-one resilience coaching package for men with one-to-one coaching calls and support via Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp in between calls to help put yourself back in the driver's seat of life. And there's a strong level of trust that goes hand in hand with walking by someone's side during their challenges and their celebrations too. And that's what I'm here for, brother. So message me and let's find your path to true resilience.